Lee Dongyun stared at the message on his desk for the third time. The holographic display showed symbols he had studied for years, but seeing them in this context made his stomach twist. The Velthari Empire wanted peace. After 300 years of silence, they wanted to talk. "This has to be a joke," Park Ji-woo said from across the room. The military advisor paced back and forth, his boots clicking on the metal floor. "The Velthari don't make peace, they make graves." Kim Sora looked up from her data tablet. Her eyes were tired from hours of research. "It's real." The message came through official channels. 3 different alien species confirmed it. "The Velthari Empire wants to meet at Concordia Station in 2 weeks. Donghyun rubbed his temples. As Earth's chief ambassador, he had dealt with many alien species. Most were reasonable, some were aggressive. The Velthari were different. They were legends. Stories told to scare children. For 3 centuries, they had ruled their section of the galaxy with absolute power. "What do we know about their previous peace talks?" Donghyun asked. Sora's fingers moved across her tablet. "That's the problem. According to galactic records, they've offered peace treaties to 17 different species over the past 1,000 years. And none of those species exist anymore." The room fell silent. Choi Min-ho, captain of the diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge, stopped cleaning his coffee cup. "Define don't exist anymore." "Gone. Completely. No colonies, no ships, no survivors. It's like they were erased from the galaxy." Sora's voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. "The pattern is always the same. Peace offer, negotiations, then nothing. Within 1 year, every trace of those species disappears." Park Ji-woo stopped pacing. "Then why are we even considering this?" Dong-yun looked at the official response from the Terran Council. The vote had been close, but clear. Earth would attend the peace talks. Because the alternative might be worse. If we refuse, they might see it as an act of war. At least this way, we have a chance. A chance to what? Become the 18th species to vanish? Ji-woo's voice rose. "We should be preparing. Our defense is not walking into their trap. Who says we can't do both?" Dong-hyun stood up and walked to the window. Earth spread out below him, blue and green and alive. Billions of humans lived on this world and dozens of others. The Council has made their decision. We go to Concordia Station, but that doesn't mean we go unprepared. Sora frowned. "What do you mean?" Donghyun turned back to face them. "Ji-woo, you have contacts in the military. What's Protocol Pandora?" Ji-woo's expression changed. His eyes became sharp and focused. "How do you know about that?" "I'm the chief ambassador. I know about many things that don't officially exist. Can it be activated? Maybe. It would require authorization from Fleet Admiral Han Kyungmin himself." "Then get it. Sora, I need you to dig deeper into those 17 species. Find any detail you can about their final days. Look for patterns, weaknesses, anything that might help us." Minho cleared his throat. "What about the Harmony's Edge? If this is a trap, a diplomatic vessel won't be much use." Dong-yun smiled grimly. "Who says it has to stay a diplomatic vessel? Can your ship be modified without anyone noticing?" "Depends on what kind of modifications you're talking about. The kind that would let us fight our way out if things go wrong. The Next few days passed in a blur of secret meetings and careful preparations. Ji-woo disappeared for hours at a time, meeting with military contacts who officially didn't exist. Sora worked around the clock, digging through alien databases and historical records. Minho spent his time with ship engineers, discussing theoretical improvements to the Harmony's Edge. Dong-hyun himself met with the Terran Council 3 more times. Each meeting was the same. The politicians wanted peace. They wanted to believe the Velthari offer was genuine. They wanted to think that humanity could join the galactic community without bloodshed. The economic benefits alone would transform our civilization, Councillor Harrison said during the final meeting. "Access to Velthari trade routes, their technology, their knowledge. We can't pass up this opportunity." "Even if it's a trap?" Dong-yun asked. "You don't know it's a trap. You have suspicions but no proof. What if you're wrong?" What if this is our one chance for peace and we destroy it because of paranoia? Dongyun didn't answer. He had learned long ago that politicians heard what they wanted to hear. On the 5th day, Jiwoo returned with news. Protocol Pandora is active. Fleet Admiral Han Kyung-min wasn't happy about it, but he agreed. If something happens to us, humanity will be ready. What exactly does that mean? It means that every human colony, every military base, every ship in our fleet is now operating under the assumption that this peace talk is an attack. They're preparing for war while hoping for peace. Sora looked up from her research. I found something. The Corventhi were the last species to accept a Velthari peace offer. Their final transmission was strange. Strange how? They said the Velthari weren't what they seemed, that the peace talks were just the beginning of something bigger. The message cut off in the middle of a sentence. Minho joined them at the table. The Harmony's Edge is ready. Officially, she's still a diplomatic vessel. Unofficially, she now has enough firepower to take on a small fleet. Good. But remember, our goal is peace. If the Veltari offer is genuine, we need to be ready to accept it. We're not going there to start a war. But if war starts anyway, Jiwoo asked. Donghyun looked at each of them in turn. These people would be with him when they faced the Velthari. Their lives depended on his decisions. Then we make sure we're not the ones who disappear from history. The day before departure, Donghyun received a final message from Earth. It was from his daughter, now grown and working as a teacher on Mars. She wished him luck and told him she was proud of him. She also said something that stuck in his mind. Dad, you've always taught me that the best defense is to be too dangerous to attack. I hope the aliens remember that humans don't give up easily. As the Harmony's Edge prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Donghyun thought about those words. 17 species had accepted Velthari peace offers. 17 species had vanished. But none of those species had been human. Maybe that would make all the difference. Fleet Admiral Han Kyung-min stood in the war room looking at star charts that showed every human settlement in the galaxy. Red dots marked military bases, blue dots showed colonies, green lines connected trade routes. It looked peaceful, but Kyung-min knew better. Protocol Pandora is now active across all human space, he announced to the officers gathered around the table. Every base commander, every ship captain, every colony leader now knows what we're dealing with. Captain Yoon Daeho stepped forward. His stealth destroyer, Silent Thunder, was the most advanced ship in the human fleet. What are our orders, sir? Your ship will shadow the diplomatic mission. Stay hidden, but be ready. If the peace talks are a trap, you'll be our first response. Young Minji raised her hand. As head of weapons development, she had been working non-stop for the past week. Admiral, the new plasma weapons are ready. They're designed specifically for what we know about Velthari technology. How do you know they'll work? We've never fought the Velthari before. We've studied their energy signatures from long-range scans. Their shields operate on a different frequency than most alien technology. Our weapons should cut right through them. Lim Taewon, the Special Forces commander, looked skeptical. Should isn't good enough. What if you're wrong? Minji's eyes flashed. Then we'll adapt. That's what humans do best. Kyungmin nodded. Taewon, your teams are embedded with the diplomatic mission? Yes, sir. 20 of my best soldiers are posing. As security staff, cultural attachés, and technical assistants, they have orders to protect the ambassador at all costs. Good. What about the Harmony's Edge itself? Captain Minho's voice came through the communication system. His ship was already 3 days into its journey to Concordia Station. The modifications are complete, Admiral. We now have hidden weapon systems, reinforced armor, and escape pods that can double as attack craft. From the outside, we still look like a peaceful diplomatic vessel. Excellent. Remember, people, we're hoping for peace, but if the Velthari want war, they'll get more than they bargained for. As the meeting ended, officers dispersed to their ships and bases. Across human space, preparations continued in secret. Colony defenders checked their weapons. Ship captains reviewed battle plans. Scientists worked on new technologies that might give humanity an edge. On the research station orbiting Jupiter, Dr. Nam Jihi studied samples of Velthari technology captured from derelict ships found in deep space. The aliens' quantum processors were incredibly advanced, but they had a weakness. All their systems are connected, she explained to her assistant. If we can disrupt their quantum frequency, their entire technology base could collapse. How do we do that? I'm working on it. The frequency is complex, but I think I've found a pattern. Give me another few days. Meanwhile, on the colony world of New Seoul, Ryu Jinwoo gathered his defense coordinators. The planet looked peaceful from space, but hidden beneath the surface were weapon platforms, shield generators, and enough supplies to withstand a long siege. The Velthari probably think we're easy targets, Jinwoo said as he reviewed defensive positions. Let them keep thinking that. Song Hyerim, leader of the system's fighter squadrons, smiled grimly. My pilots are ready. We've been practicing hit-and-run tactics for months. If the aliens come here expecting an easy fight, they're in for a surprise. In the asteroid belt, mining operations continued as normal. But the miners weren't just extracting metals and minerals. Hidden factories built weapons and ammunition. Supply ships carried these materials to human colonies throughout the galaxy. An Dong-sok, an intelligence operative, worked from a small office on Earth that officially didn't exist. His job was to monitor alien communications and plant disinformation when necessary. The Velthari allies are nervous, he reported to his superiors. They've never seen their masters offer peace before. Some of them are questioning whether this is wise. Can we use that? Maybe. If things go bad, I might be able to turn some of their allies against them. Fear is a powerful weapon. Back on the Harmony's edge, the diplomatic team continued their journey to Concordia Station. They spent their time studying Velthari culture and language, preparing for negotiations that might save or doom humanity. Park Ji-woo reviewed military intelligence reports in his cabin. The Velthari Empire controlled 3 species: the Velthari themselves, who were the rulers, the Kronar, who served as their military, and the Theski, who handled technology and industry. 3 species, but they think as one, he muttered to himself. That could be a strength or a weakness. Kim Sora worked on communication protocols. If the peace talks failed, humanity would need to coordinate its response across hundreds of light years of space. Emergency frequencies are established, she reported to Ambassador Dong-hyun. Every human settlement can receive orders within minutes. Dong-hyun nodded. And if we can't send orders? Then they already know what to do. Protocol Pandora covers that situation. Lee Dong-hyun spent his evenings reading reports from the 17 species that had vanished after meeting with the Velthari. Each story was the same: peaceful contact, generous offers, successful negotiations, then silence. The Corventhi lasted 11 months after signing their treaty, he noted. The Zephyrians managed 8 months. The Talaxians only made it 6 months. What happened to them? Asked his aide, Oh Sang-wook, who was actually a former Marine in disguise. No one knows. Their colonies were found empty. Their ships were discovered, drifting in space. No signs of battle, no distress signals. They just stopped. Sang-wook frowned. That doesn't sound like a military conquest. No, it doesn't. It sounds like something else entirely. As the days passed, more reports arrived from human space. The stealth destroyer Silent Thunder had reached the edge of Velthari territory and begun long-range scanning. Captain Daho's reports were disturbing. Massive fleet movements, Admiral, he transmitted to Fleet Admiral Kyungmin. They're positioning ships near our border, but trying to keep them hidden. How many ships? At least 300 that I can detect, probably. More that I can't see. Kyungmin felt cold. 300 ships was enough to attack every major human colony simultaneously. Continue monitoring. Stay hidden. On Concordia Station, preparations for the peace talks continued. The neutral station was run by an ancient alien species called the Mediators. They had hosted peace negotiations for thousands of years and took pride in their neutrality. But even the Mediators seemed nervous about this particular meeting. The Velthari have never used our services before, the station administrator told his staff. They prefer to handle their diplomacy with weapons. So why now? I don't know. But I've tripled our security and prepared emergency evacuation procedures. Something about this feels wrong. As the Harmony's Edge approached Concordia Station, Jung Minji made final adjustments to the hidden weapon systems. The ship's exterior still looked peaceful, but underneath its diplomatic skin, it was ready for war. Plasma cannons are fully charged, she reported. Missile tubes are loaded. Shield generators are running at maximum efficiency. Captain Minho checked his flight controls one last time. Escape routes are programmed. If we need to run, we can be out of here in 30 seconds. Ambassador Dongyun looked out at the stars and thought about his daughter's words. Humans don't give up easily. The Velthari were about to learn that lesson, one way or another. Take us in, Captain, he ordered. Let's see what the Velthari really want. The Harmony's Edge approached Concordia Station, carrying the hopes and fears of humanity. Behind them, hidden in the darkness, the silent thunder followed like a ghost. And across human space, billions of people waited to see if their species would join the galactic community in peace or prove once again that humans were too dangerous to kill. Concordia Station hung in space like a giant crystal, its surfaces reflecting the light of 3 nearby stars. The ancient structure had witnessed countless peace negotiations over the millennia. Most had ended well. Some had not. As the Harmony's Edge approached the docking bay, Lee Dongyun wondered which category this meeting would fall into. Incoming transmission, announced Kang Sung-ho, the communications officer. It's from the station administrator. Put it through. A holographic alien appeared above the communication console. The mediator looked like a tall, thin humanoid covered in silver scales. His voice was calm and measured, as befitted his species' role as neutral arbiters. Welcome to Concordia Station, Ambassador Donghyun. I am Administrator Kelthon. We are honored to host these historic negotiations. Thank you, Administrator. We appreciate the mediator's commitment to neutrality. Of course. The Velthari delegation arrived 2 days ago. They are eager to begin discussions. Your quarters have been prepared in the diplomatic sector. Donghyun noticed something odd in the administrator's voice. A slight tremor, perhaps fear. Is everything all right, Administrator? Everything is proceeding according to protocol. We will begin formal negotiations tomorrow at the standard time. The transmission ended abruptly. Dongyun looked at his team. Did anyone else notice that the administrator seemed nervous? Sora was monitoring her scanning equipment. I'm picking up some strange readings. There are a lot more ships in this system than there should be. What kind of ships? I can't tell for sure. They're staying just outside the neutral zone, but their energy signatures are massive. Much larger than anything in our database. Park Jiwoo checked his tactical display. How many ships are we talking about? At least 50. Maybe more. They're spread out across the system, but they're definitely there. Captain Minho guided the Harmony's Edge into the docking bay. The process was smooth and routine, but something felt wrong. The station seemed too quiet, too empty. Where is everyone? Asked Oh Sang-wook, the disguised Marine who served as Dongyun's aide. A station this size should have hundreds of people moving around. The mediators value privacy during negotiations, Dongyun replied, but he was thinking the same thing. Concordia Station felt like a tomb. As they disembarked, they were met by a small group of mediators and their first glimpse of the Velthari delegation. Veltar Corvain, the supreme negotiator, was tall and elegant, with blue-gray skin and eyes that seemed to see everything. He was flanked by 2 Kronar warriors, massive beings that looked like they were built for war. Ambassador Dongyun, Corvain said in perfect English. I am honored to meet the representative of humanity. Your species has achieved much in such a short time. Thank you, Supreme Negotiator. We are hopeful that our species can find common ground. As are we. The Velthari Empire has great respect for human determination and ingenuity. Perhaps we can discuss how best to channel those qualities. Dr. Nam Ji-hye, The xenobiologist who was part of the diplomatic team studied the aliens carefully. She had spent years analyzing Velthari technology, and seeing them in person gave her new insights. The negotiations began the next morning in a large chamber designed for multi-species diplomacy. The terms offered by the Velthari were surprisingly generous. Complete autonomy for human colonies, access to advanced technology, protection under Velthari law, and lucrative trade agreements. These terms are quite favorable, Dongyun said carefully. Perhaps too favorable. What does the Velthari Empire gain from this arrangement? Corvain smiled, showing teeth that were slightly too sharp. We gain the knowledge that humanity is part of our greater community. Your species has shown remarkable adaptability. We believe you would be valuable allies. For 3 days, the negotiations continued. The Velthari were patient, reasonable, and accommodating. They answered every question, addressed every concern, and made concessions that seemed almost too good to be true. But Kim Sora's equipment was telling a different story. The ships outside the neutral zone are moving, she reported privately to Dongyun. They're taking positions around human space. Are you certain? The quantum signatures match known Velthari warship designs. They're not trying very hard to hide them anymore. Dr. Nam Jihye had been studying the Velthari delegation during breaks in negotiations. I figured out something important about their technology, she told the team during a private meeting. Their entire civilization runs on linked quantum processors. Every ship, every base, every piece of equipment is connected to a central network. What does that mean for us? It means they have a single point of failure. If we could disrupt their quantum frequency, we could cripple their entire empire. Park Ji-woo looked skeptical. That sounds too easy. It wouldn't be easy. The frequency is constantly changing, and it's protected by multiple layers of encryption. But if we could crack it... On the 4th day, Dongyun attempted to contact Earth to report on the negotiations. The communication request was denied. System malfunction, explained the mediator technician. We are working to repair the problem. Kang. Seongho tried to establish contact using the Harmony's Edge's communication array. The signal was blocked. That's not a malfunction, Seongho reported. We're being jammed. Someone doesn't want us talking to the outside. Dongyun felt the first cold touch of fear. The pattern was becoming clear. Generous peace terms, isolated, negotiations, communication blackouts. This was exactly what had happened to the 17 vanished species. Continue the negotiations, he ordered quietly. Act like nothing has changed. But be ready. Oh. Sang-wook nodded and passed a discreet signal to other members of the team. Around the diplomatic quarters, 20 hidden soldiers began checking their weapons. The next morning brought disturbing news. Administrator Kelthan approached Dongyun with obvious reluctance. Ambassador, I regret to inform you that the neutral zone is being expanded. For security reasons, no ships will be allowed to enter or leave the system until negotiations are complete. How long might that take? The Velthari estimate another week, perhaps 2. Dongyun kept his expression neutral, but inside he was furious. They were prisoners now, trapped on the station while Velthari fleets moved into position around human space. During that day's negotiations, Corvain seemed different, more confident, almost smug. We hope you will consider our final offer carefully, Ambassador. This is a unique opportunity for humanity. And if we decline? Why would you decline? The terms are extremely generous. Hypothetically, Corvain's smile became colder. Hypothetically, that would be unfortunate. The galaxy can be a dangerous place for species that stand alone. That evening, Kim Sora made a disturbing discovery. I've been monitoring energy patterns around the station. They're charging some kind of massive weapon array. Where? Built into the station itself. Concordia Station isn't just a neutral meeting place. It's a trap. Dr. Nam Jihye looked up from her quantum analysis equipment. I've been tracking their communication signals. The Velthari aren't just here to negotiate. They're coordinating something big. What kind of something? Fleet movements, attack schedules. This entire peace negotiation is a delaying tactic. While we're trapped here, their ships are moving into position around every human colony. Park. Jiwoo's face was grim. When do they attack? According to their communication patterns, they're waiting for a signal from here. Probably when negotiations officially fail or when we try to escape. Dongyun looked around at his team. These people had come here hoping for peace, but they had prepared for war. Now it was time to see if their preparations were enough. Signal. Captain Minho, he ordered. Tell him to prepare the Harmony's Edge for immediate departure. Sir, if we try to leave now, we'll be confirming their suspicions. They already know we figured out their plan. Look at Corvain during today's session. He stopped pretending this was a real negotiation. That night, as the team prepared for what might be their final battle, Dongyun thought about the 17 species that had vanished. They had probably sat in similar rooms, having similar conversations, making similar discoveries. But none of those species had been human, and humans, as his daughter had said, don't give up easily. Outside the station, hidden in the darkness, Captain Deho's silent thunder waited and watched. The trap had been sprung, but the Velthari were about to learn that humans had brought their own weapons to this peace negotiation. The alarm started at exactly 0600 station time. Lee Dongyun was already awake, sitting in his quarters and reviewing the emergency protocols one last time. The sound was meant to signal a routine safety drill, but everyone on the human team knew better. All diplomatic personnel report to the main conference room for emergency briefing, came the announcement over the station's communication system. The voice belonged to Administrator Kelthon, but it sounded strained and tired. Oh Sang-wook knocked on Dongyun's door. Sir, it's time. As they walked through the corridors toward the conference room, Dongyun noticed changes in the station. Blast doors had been sealed. Security checkpoints had been activated. Armed Kronar warriors stood at key intersections, their massive forms blocking escape routes. They're not even pretending anymore, Park Jiwoo muttered as they passed another checkpoint. The conference room was larger than usual, designed to hold multiple delegations. But today, it felt like a trap. The Velthari delegation sat at one end of the long table, with Veltar Corvain looking calm and confident. Administrator. Kelthon stood near the wall, his silver scales dulled with what looked like fear or shame. Please be seated, Ambassador, Corvain said politely. We have important matters to discuss. Dongyun took his place at the table with his team arranged around him. Kim Sora had a small device hidden in her hand, monitoring energy levels throughout the station. Dr. Nam Ji carried what looked like a medical scanner but was actually a quantum frequency analyzer. The other team members, including the disguised soldiers, sat ready for action. The negotiations have reached a critical point, Corvain continued. We require a final decision from humanity regarding our generous offer. And if our decision is no? Corvain's smile never wavered. Why would you refuse? The alternative is so much less pleasant. What alternative? The same alternative that faced the Corventhi, the Zephyrians, and 15 other species who chose poorly. There it was. The admission they had all been waiting for. Dongyun felt a strange sense of relief. No more pretending, no more diplomatic. Games. The mask had finally come off. I see. And if we accept your generous terms, then humanity joins the Velthari Empire as valued subjects. Your colonies will be relocated to more suitable worlds. Your population will be reduced to sustainable levels. Your technology will be improved under our guidance. Kim Sora's hidden device was vibrating against her palm. Energy weapons throughout the station were charging. In a few minutes, the conference room would become a killing ground. That's very kind of you, Dongyun said calmly. But I think we'll have to decline. Corvain's expression didn't change, but the Kronar warriors standing behind him tensed for action. That is unfortunate, Ambassador, but perhaps not unexpected. Actually, it's very expected. You see, we humans have a saying, if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. Your suspicions were justified, but they will not save you. This station is now sealed. Your ship is disabled. Your colonies are surrounded. Humanity's brief time as an independent species is over. Donghyun stood up slowly. There's just one problem with your plan, which is, you assumed we came here peacefully. Oh Sang-wook pressed a button on his belt. Throughout the station, 20 human diplomats received the signal simultaneously. In maintenance shafts, supply closets, and even inside diplomatic gift boxes, hidden soldiers emerged with weapons drawn. The conference room erupted into chaos. The Kronar warriors reached for their weapons, but Baek Ji-hoon, the explosives expert, disguised as a cultural attaché, had already activated charges placed throughout the room. The blast threw everyone to the ground and destroyed the station's internal security systems. Young Minji's adaptive plasma weapons proved devastatingly effective. The first Kronar warrior fell before he could draw his sidearm, his personal shield, flickering and dying as human plasma bolts tore through Veltari defenses. The frequency works, Dr. Nam Ji-hee shouted over the sound of weapons fire. Their shields can't adapt fast enough. Corvain himself was protected by advanced personal armor, but even he looked shocked as human soldiers poured into the room from hidden passages. This is impossible. You came here for peace negotiations. We came here hoping for peace, Donghyun replied, drawing his own sidearm. But we prepared for war. Captain Minho's voice crackled through emergency communicators. Harmony's edge is breaking dock. The station's weapon systems are trying to lock onto us, but our countermeasures are holding. Outside the station, the trap's second phase was activating. Velthari warships that had been hiding just outside the neutral zone began moving toward the station, intent on capturing or destroying the human vessel. But Captain Yoon Daeho had been waiting for this moment. The Silent Thunder uncloaked directly behind the lead Velthari battleship and opened fire with everything it had. This is Silent Thunder to Harmony's edge. Daeho's voice came through the communicators. The cavalry has arrived. The stealth destroyer's surprise attack crippled 2 Velthari ships before they even knew they were under attack. But more ships were coming, and the humans were badly outnumbered. Inside the station, the battle continued. Oh Sang-wook led his soldiers through corridors that had become a maze of deadly firefights. The Kronar were tough and well-trained, but they had never faced an enemy that refused to follow conventional tactics. Shin Yuna, we need air support, Sang-wook called into his communicator. On the way came the reply. Hidden fighter craft that had been disguised as cargo containers launched from the Harmony's edge and began strafing the station's external weapons. Administrator Kelthon cowered behind an overturned table as the battle raged around him. This is madness. Concordia Station is neutral territory. Tell that to the Veltari, Dr. Nam Ji-hee replied as she worked frantically on her quantum frequency device. They turned your station into a weapon. What are you doing? Giving them a taste of their own medicine. The device in her hands was crude but effective. If she could broadcast the right quantum frequency, she could disrupt Velthari technology. Throughout the system, their ships would be crippled, their weapons disabled, their communication networks destroyed. But first, she had to survive long enough to activate it. Corvain had taken cover behind a blast barrier and was speaking rapidly into a communication device. All fleets begin the assault on human colonies immediately. Do not wait for the signal. Too late for that, Kim Sora said as she monitored enemy communications. Our people back home received the warning hours ago. What warning? The one we sent as soon as we figured out your plan. Did you really think we'd come here without backup preparations? For the first time, Corvain looked uncertain. Your communications were jammed. Our official communications were jammed. But humans are good at improvising. The truth was that Captain Daeho had been relaying messages between the diplomatic team and Fleet Admiral Han Kyungmin since the moment they arrived at Concordia Station. Every discovery, every suspicion, every piece of evidence had been transmitted back to human space. While the Velthari had been positioning their fleets for a surprise attack, the humans had been preparing their own surprise. Baek Ji-hoon detonated another series of charges, this time targeting the station's main power grid. Emergency lighting flickered on as primary systems failed throughout Concordia Station. Station weapons are offline, Shin Yuna reported from her fighter. Whatever you did in there, it worked. Dr. Namjihi smiled grimly as she made final adjustments to her quantum frequency device. This should level the playing field. She activated the device, and across the system, Velthari technology began to fail. Ship engines stuttered and died. Weapon systems went offline. Communication networks dissolved into static. "What have you done?" Corvain demanded. "We've proven that even the mighty Velthari Empire has weaknesses," Donghyun replied. "The question is, do you want to continue this fight, or would you prefer to discuss actual peace terms?" Around them, the sounds of battle were fading. With their technology disrupted and their ships crippled, the Velthari forces were in no position to continue the attack, but Donghyun knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when news of the failed trap reached the rest of the Velthari Empire. Humanity had won this battle, but the war was just starting. At least now the Velthari knew that humans were not easy prey. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone tried to trap a species that considered impossible odds. Just another interesting challenge. The emergency alert reached every human colony simultaneously. Across dozens of star systems, defense coordinators who had been waiting for this moment sprang into action. The Velthari Empire had revealed its true intentions, and now, humanity would show them what a real war looked like. On New Sol, Colony Defense Commander Ryu Jinwoo watched as Velthari warships dropped out of hyperspace around his world. The aliens had expected to find defenseless colonists and easy targets. Instead, they found a planet that had been secretly preparing for this day for weeks. "Hidden weapons platforms are online," reported his tactical officer. "All civilian shelters are sealed. Fighter squadrons are launching." The lead Velthari battleship sent a standard surrender demand. Jinwoo's response was a coordinated barrage from weapon systems the aliens hadn't known existed. The first enemy ship exploded in brilliant fire before its captain could even react. "This is New Sol control to all Velthari vessels," Jinwoo broadcast on an open channel. "You have entered sovereign human space with hostile intent. You have exactly 30 seconds to retreat before we show you why that was a mistake." The Velthari commander, a Kronar named Morgak, was confused and angry. Intelligence reports had described human colonies as lightly defended farming worlds. This world had military-grade shields and weapons that shouldn't exist. "All ships, attack formation. Destroy their defensive platforms." What followed was unlike any battle the Velthari had ever fought. The humans didn't fight like a proper military force. They used suicide runs, ramming attacks, and tactics that seemed designed to cause maximum damage with no regard for their own survival. Song Hyerim led her fighter squadron in an attack that would have been called insane by any military academy. Her pilots flew directly into the enemy formation, using their smaller ships as guided missiles while ejecting at the last possible moment. "This is Falcon Leader," she called as her fighter slammed into a Velthari cruiser. "Remember, people, we only have to be crazy enough to win." The Velthari fleet found itself fighting an enemy that treated acceptable losses as a suggestion rather than a limit. Human defenders would sacrifice entire squadrons to destroy a single enemy ship, calculating that the trade was worth it. But the real shock came when the humans revealed their true defensive capabilities. What had looked like a simple agricultural world was actually a fortress. Weapon emplacements rose from hidden bunkers. Entire asteroids revealed themselves to be camouflaged battle stations. The planet's moon opened like a flower to reveal a massive shipyard that immediately began launching fresh fighters. In the asteroid belt around the star Kepler 442, mining operations that had seemed peaceful and routine suddenly showed their true purpose. The miners weren't just extracting minerals. They had been building weapons and ships for months. Captain Wan Sungjae commanded one of these mining vessels that was actually a heavily armed warship disguised as industrial equipment. "All mining ships, this is Sungjae. Time to show these aliens what human engineering can really do." The Velthari fleet that had come to destroy the mining operation found itself facing enemies that emerged from asteroids like angry wasps from a disturbed nest. The human ships were crude and ugly compared to elegant Velthari designs, but they were also incredibly tough and packed with firepower. "Their ships make no sense," complained Velthari Admiral Kethron as he watched his forces struggle against human defenders. They're built like weapons platforms, not spacecraft. That was exactly the point. Human ship designers had looked at alien vessels and decided that speed and elegance were less important than the ability to take damage and keep fighting. Their ships were mobile fortresses designed to win through sheer stubborn determination. The colony world of Haven, the population evacuation that the Velthari expected to find had never happened. Instead, the colonists had armed themselves and prepared to fight for their homes. An Dong-suk, the intelligence operative, had been working among the civilian population for weeks. His job wasn't just to gather information, it was to turn ordinary people into an army. "Remember," he told the citizen militias as Velthari troops landed outside the main city, "they expect us to surrender or run. We're going to do neither." The urban warfare that followed was a nightmare for the Velthari ground forces. The humans had turned their own cities into mazes of death traps, hidden weapons, and ambush points. Every building could contain snipers. Every street could hide explosives. Every civilian could be carrying weapons. The Kronar warriors were trained for conventional battles between organized military forces. They had never faced an entire population that treated war as a community effort. Children guided human soldiers through secret passages. Elderly citizens operated heavy weapons from hidden bunkers. Shopkeepers became saboteurs who destroyed Velthari equipment with homemade explosives. "This is not war," one Kronar officer complained to his commander. "This is madness." "Yes," replied the commander grimly, "and they're very good at it. But the humans' greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their complete refusal to accept defeat. On world after world, Velthari commanders found themselves fighting enemies who would rather die than surrender. The colony ship New Horizon was caught between 3 Velthari battleships while evacuating civilians from an outer system research station. Captain Lee Young-ho had 2 choices: surrender and hope for mercy or fight against impossible odds. "All hands, this is the captain," he announced over the ship's communication system. "We have a choice to make. We can surrender and hope they treat us well, or we can show them that humans don't go quietly into the night." The crew's response was unanimous. The New Horizon was a civilian vessel with minimal weapons, but her crew turned her into a guided missile aimed at the largest Velthari ship. At the last moment, they launched every escape pod toward the research station, while their ship took the enemy battleship down with her. This pattern repeated throughout human space. Outgunned colonies fought with desperate courage. Civilian ships became weapons. Ordinary people became warriors. The Velthari found themselves fighting not just a military force, but an entire species that had decided death was preferable to slavery. Intelligence reports began reaching Velthari command centers. That painted a disturbing picture. Human resistance wasn't weakening. It was getting stronger. Colonies that should have fallen within hours were still fighting after days. Worlds that appeared conquered were launching constant guerrilla attacks. "How many humans are there?" demanded Admiral Kethron as he reviewed casualty reports. "Population estimates suggest approximately 12 billion across all their colonies," his intelligence officer replied. "And how many of them are fighters?" "According to our observations, all of them." The psychological impact on Velthari forces was devastating. They had expected to fight human military units and then occupy peaceful civilian populations. Instead, they found themselves in a war against an entire species where every person was a potential enemy. On the industrial world of Forge, the factory, workers had spent weeks converting their manufacturing plants to produce weapons instead of consumer goods. When Velthari forces landed expecting to capture intact production facilities, they found themselves fighting through factory districts that had become military fortresses. Master Engineer Park Chan-woo had turned his spacecraft assembly plant into a weapon production facility. "Every tool can be a weapon," he told his workers. "Every machine can make ammunition, every human can fight." The Velthari had conquered many species over the centuries, but none had ever fought back like this. Most civilizations had military forces that could be defeated and civilian populations that could be controlled. Humanity seemed to have no distinction between soldiers and civilians. They were all warriors. As news of the failed trap at Concordia Station spread through the galaxy, other species began to take notice. The mighty Velthari Empire, which had seemed unstoppable for 1,000 years, was being bloodied by a young species that most aliens had never heard of. Some alien governments began secret communications with human colonies, offering supplies and support. The Velthari Empire had many enemies who had been too afraid to act, until now. In deep space, Fleet Admiral Han Kyungmin coordinated the human response from his flagship. The battle reports coming in from across human space painted a clear picture. The Velthari had superior technology and numbers, but humans had something more important. They fight like they have nothing to lose, observed his tactical officer. That's because they don't, Kyungmin replied. Every human knows what happened to the 17 species that trusted the Velthari. We all know that surrender means extinction. The war that the Velthari Empire had expected to win in days was turning into a grinding conflict that might last for years. And for the first time in their long history, the Velthari were facing an enemy that seemed to get more dangerous the longer the fighting continued. Humanity had been trapped, betrayed, and attacked. But they were still fighting, still refusing to give up, still proving that some species were simply too stubborn to be conquered. The galaxy was about to learn that when humans said, "never again," they meant it.